Vienna, a city of grand palaces, a symphony of classical music, and horses that dance like ballet stars. These things did not just appear by chance. For nearly 700 years, one family, the Habsburgs, profoundly shaped the art people saw, the music they heard, the buildings they lived in, and even the food they ate across half of Europe. Their story is not just about emperors and empires, it is about the daily lives of millions influenced by strokes of genius, ambition, and quiet obsession. They built a world of unparalleled beauty and knowledge, brick by brick, note by note, brushstroke by brushstroke. This is the story of 10 such remarkable contributions. Number 1. The Spanish Riding School. The chill morning air in Vienna held a promise, a whisper of anticipation. Inside the winter riding school, a vast arena, bathed in soft natural light, filtering through tall arched windows, a single white horse stepped with an elegant precision that defied its powerful build. Its rider, dressed in a traditional brown tailcoat and bicorn hat, sat perfectly still, a statue atop a living sculpture. This was not a performance for entertainment alone. It was a daily dedication, centuries in the making, to the art of classical horsemanship. The Lipizzaner stallions, magnificent creatures with coats of pure white, were the heart of this venerable institution. Their story began long before this morning's session, tracing back to the 16th century when the first horses for the imperial stud were brought from Spain. Emperor Maximilian II, a forward-thinking ruler with a keen eye for quality, recognized the exceptional qualities of the Spanish horses, their intelligence, their strength, and their natural grace. He established a stud farm at Lipizzaner, a small village in present-day Somia, in 1580, specifically to breed these magnificent animals. He envisioned horses that were not just war-mounts, but partners in a refined art form capable of performing complex maneuvers with beauty and dignity. The foundation for what would become the Spanish riding school was laid even earlier in 1572, when the first riding hall was built in Vienna, close to the imperial palace. This was a place where noblemen could perfect their riding skills, where the art of the equestrian was honed to a razor's edge. The Habsburg emperors understood that riding was more than just a means of transport or a skill for battle. It was a reflection of power, discipline, and culture. A perfectly executed gallop, a controlled pirouette, a precise passage. These were not just physical feats. They were statements of refined elegance, symbols of an enlightened court. Generations of master riders dedicated their lives to understanding the subtle language of the horse. They studied ancient texts, observed the natural movements of horses, and developed a system of training that was both rigorous and deeply respectful of the animal. It was a slow, painstaking process, requiring immense patience and an almost spiritual connection between rider and horse. The training often took years, sometimes a decade, to bring a young Lipizzaner to the peak of its abilities. Each movement, from the basic walk to the highly demanding airs above the ground, leaps and kicks that seemed to defy gravity, was meticulously taught step by careful step. One of the most famous emperors who profoundly loved and supported the Spanish riding school was Charles VI. In the early 18th century, he commissioned the renowned architect Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach to design a new, grand winter riding school. Charles VI envisioned a space that was not just functional but truly magnificent, a fitting setting for the exceptional horses and their riders. The resulting hall, completed in 1735, was a masterpiece of Baroque architecture. Soaring white walls, intricate stucco decorations, and a large, bright riding arena. It was designed to impress, to elevate the act of riding into a form of high art. The emperor himself was a skilled rider, and he spent countless hours observing the training sessions, his presence a testament to the importance he placed on this equestrian tradition. The Lipizzaners were not merely performers, They were living treasures, cherished and protected by the Habsburg family. During times of war and political upheaval, their safety was paramount. In 1945, during the final chaotic days of World War II, the very existence of the Lipizzaner breed was threatened. General George S. Patton, a cavalryman himself, understood the historical and cultural significance of the horses. Under his orders, a daring rescue operation dubbed Operation Cowboy saved the precious breeding stock from falling into enemy hands. The horses were evacuated from their wartime refuge in Hostau, Czechoslovakia, to a safer location, ensuring the survival of this unique lineage. It was a moment where military might bowed to cultural preservation, a testament to the enduring legacy the Habsburgs had cultivated. The daily routine at the Spanish riding school remained largely unchanged for centuries. Each morning, the young horses, still with their dark youthful coats, began their foundational training. They learned to respond to the rider's subtle cues, to develop balance, and to build strength. As they matured, their coats slowly turned white, and they progressed to more advanced exercises, eventually mastering the intricate ballets that captivated audiences. The riders, often starting their training as teenagers, dedicated their entire lives to the school living and breathing the tradition. They wore the historical uniform, a symbol of their commitment to a lineage that spanned hundreds of years, a living link to the imperial court of old. The school became a symbol of Austrian cultural identity, a living museum of classical horsemanship. Tourists from around the globe flocked to witness the morning exercise, to see the majestic horses perform their school quadrille, a meticulously choreographed dance involving 8 horses moving in perfect synchronicity. The air is above the ground, like the majestic courbette, where the horse balances on its hind legs, or the powerful capriole, where it leaps into the air, kicking out with all 4 legs, demonstrated the pinnacle of equestrian art. These maneuvers, once used for military advantage on the battlefield, had been transformed into a pure artistic expression, a silent, powerful ballet. The Habsburgs had not only founded a school, they had preserved a profound art form, kept alive a unique breed of horse, and created a living, breathing testament to discipline, beauty, and tradition that continued to inspire and awe generations. Number 2. Medical innovation. Vienna in the mid-18th century was a city of contrasts, a place where grand Baroque palaces stood alongside crowded, often unsanitary urban areas. For centuries, medicine had been a mixture of ancient theories, folk remedies, and often brutal practices. Doctors, while learned, operated with limited scientific understanding. Sickness and death were constant companions for all, from the lowliest peasant to the highest noble. This reality deeply troubled Empress Maria Theresia. She was a ruler of extraordinary energy and determination, who believed in the power of enlightened reform. She looked at the state of medical care and saw a clear need for radical change. Her focus was not just on treating the sick, but on fundamentally transforming medical education and public health. She understood that a strong empire needed healthy subjects and that effective healthcare required rigorous scientific training. Her vision was ambitious: to make Vienna a global center for medical excellence. Her key figure in this monumental task was Gerard van Swieten, a Dutch physician who had served as her personal doctor. Van Swieten was a man of the Enlightenment, a proponent of empirical observation and systematic study, rather than ancient dogma. Maria Theresia entrusted him with the monumental task of reforming the University of Vienna's medical faculty. Van Swieten arrived in Vienna in 1745, bringing with him a fresh perspective and a fierce commitment to modernizing medicine. He immediately set about implementing sweeping changes. Previously, medical students had learned primarily from dusty textbooks, with little hands-on experience. Van Swieten changed that. He pushed for the establishment of clinical teaching, where students would learn directly from observing and treating patients. This was a revolutionary concept at the time, shifting medical education from abstract theory to practical application. He insisted on regular anatomical dissections, which were crucial for understanding the human body, but were often frowned upon or restricted. He made it mandatory for students to attend clinics, to examine patients, to take detailed case histories, and to participate in discussions about diagnosis and treatments. To support this new approach, the Empress and Van Swieten embarked on the construction of new facilities. The old university buildings were inadequate. A new general hospital, the Allgemeines Krankenhaus, was built, starting in 1784, under the reign of her son, Joseph II, but conceptually rooted in Maria Theresia's reforms. This was not just a place for the sick. It was a vast complex designed to be a teaching hospital, a place where medical students could rotate through different departments, learning about various diseases and treatments. It had specialized wards for different conditions, operating theaters and rooms for autopsies. The very structure of the hospital was designed to facilitate learning and scientific research. Van Swieten also established the Imperial Royal Medical and Surgical Academy in 1785. Later known as the Josephinum, this was a separate institution dedicated specifically to the training of military surgeons, a critical need for an empire frequently at war. It emphasized practical skills, including surgery, anatomy, and even pharmacology. The Josephinum famously housed a collection of realistic wax anatomical models, commissioned by Joseph II from Florence. These models, depicting human anatomy in incredible detail, allowed students to study the body without the need for constant access to cadavers, a highly valuable resource for learning intricate surgical procedures. They were remarkably lifelike, showing muscles, organs, and vascular systems with breathtaking accuracy, serving as a permanent reference library of the human form. The reforms extended beyond. Van Swieten advocated for public health measures, pushing for improved sanitation, hygiene, and the control of epidemics. He introduced quarantine regulations, pushed for the professionalization of midwives, and promoted the concept of a state-supervised medical system. He also created a sophisticated system of medical libraries, encouraging doctors to read the latest scientific journals and research from across Europe. He founded a botanical garden in Vienna, where medicinal plants could be cultivated and studied, directly linking the study of botany to pharmacology. The impact of these changes was profound. Vienna rapidly became a magnet for medical talent from across Europe. Doctors, surgeons, and researchers flocked to the city, drawn by the innovative teaching methods, the access to patients at the general hospital, and the vibrant intellectual atmosphere. The Vienna School of Medicine, as it came to be known, produced generations of brilliant physicians and scientists. Figures like Leopold Auenbrugger, who invented percussion as a diagnostic tool by tapping on a patient's chest to listen for internal sounds, and Joseph Skoda, who refined diagnosis through auscultation and percussion, laid the groundwork for modern clinical medicine. Their discoveries, often made at the bedside in the general hospital, directly improved the ability of doctors to identify and treat diseases. This commitment to medical innovation was not just about saving lives. It was about elevating human knowledge and establishing the Habsburg monarchy as a leader in scientific progress. Maria Theresia and her successors understood that investing in medicine was investing in the future, in the health and prosperity of their people. They built institutions, fostered a culture of scientific inquiry, and attracted the brightest minds, forever changing the way medicine was taught, practiced, and understood, pushing it from a speculative art towards a rigorous science. Number 3. Botanical and scientific exploration. Emperor Franz I Stephan, the husband of Maria Theresia, often lived in the shadow of his formidable wife, whose political acumen and administrative reforms reshaped the Habsburg Empire. Yet Franz Stephan possessed a quiet but profound passion that would leave an indelible mark on European science and culture. His fervent interest in botany, zoology, and natural history. He was not a warrior or a grand statesman, but a man of science, a keen observer of the natural world, and a collector of immense curiosity. His fascination with the exotic and the unknown coupled with his wealth and imperial connections, allowed him to become a significant patron of scientific exploration. Franz Stefan's personal inclination towards natural sciences began early. He was a member of the House of Lorraine and grew up with an innate curiosity for the world around him. Upon his marriage to Maria Theresia, he found himself with the resources to pursue his intellectual passions on an imperial scale. He established his private cabinet of Naturalia and Artificialia, a collection of objects from the natural world, minerals, shells, preserved animals, rare plants, and human-made curiosities. This was more than just a hobby. It was a serious endeavor to categorize and understand the vast diversity of life. He corresponded with leading scientists and naturalists across Europe, exchanging specimens, ideas, and knowledge. His greatest contribution to scientific exploration came with the expansion and transformation of the Schönbrunn Gardens. Originally a Baroque hunting park, Franz Stefan envisioned something more: a living laboratory, a botanical encyclopedia, and a place of wonder. He hired some of the finest botanists and gardeners of his time, tasking them with collecting and cultivating plants from every corner of the globe. He financed expeditions to distant lands, sending intrepid naturalists to explore uncharted territories and bring back never-before-seen flora and fauna. These were perilous journeys, often lasting years, facing disease, dangerous terrain, and uncertain returns. Yet the allure of discovery, fueled by imperial patronage, drove these brave men. One of the most famous examples was the expedition to the Caribbean and South America in the late 18th century. Led by the botanist Nicolaus Joseph von Jacquin, who had been appointed director of the Schönbrunn Botanical Garden, Jacquin brought back thousands of plant specimens, many of them entirely new to European science. These were meticulously documented, sketched, and cultivated in the glasshouses and gardens of Schönbrunn. The Empress herself often visited the gardens, sometimes accompanied by her children, witnessing the arrival of new specimens and the meticulous work of the gardeners. It was a place where scientific inquiry met imperial grandeur. The Schönbrunn Zoo, founded in 1752, was another direct outcome of Franz Stefan's passion. It began as an imperial menagerie, a collection of exotic animals for the amusement and instruction of the court. But, unlike earlier, less organized animal collections, Franz Stefan ensured that the Schönbrunn Zoo was designed with a scientific purpose. Animals were housed in spacious enclosures, and their behavior was observed and documented. It was the world's first zoo, built for scientific study, reflecting an emerging enlightenment interest in classifying and understanding the animal kingdom. Lions, elephants, giraffes, and countless bird species from Africa, Asia, and the Americas found a new home in Schönbrunn, becoming subjects of study rather than just objects of spectacle. The emperor personally engaged with the scientists and artists who worked on these projects. He spent hours in his cabinet examining specimens under a microscope, discussing classification with botanists, and commissioning artists to create detailed, accurate illustrations of the new plants and animals. These illustrations were not just beautiful, they were vital scientific records, predating photography, allowing for widespread study and comparison. Franz Stefan's personal library was filled with scientific treatises, travelogues, and volumes of botanical and zoological prints. He encouraged the publication of these discoveries, ensuring that the knowledge gained through these expeditions reached the wider scientific community across Europe. The legacy of Franz Stefan's passion extended far beyond his lifetime. The Schönbrunn Botanical Garden became a center for botanical research and plant distribution. It played a crucial role in introducing new species to Europe, some of which had significant economic or medicinal value. The zoo continued to evolve, becoming a leading institution for animal conservation and research. The meticulous documentation and classification efforts initiated under Franz Stefan laid foundational groundwork for later biological studies. He fostered a spirit of scientific inquiry at the highest levels of the imperial court, demonstrating that the pursuit of knowledge, particularly in the natural sciences, was a worthy endeavor for even the most powerful rulers. He transformed Schönbrunn into a hub of exploration and learning, a place where the mysteries of the natural world were systematically unraveled, contributing significantly to Europe's understanding of global biodiversity. Number 4. Libraries and knowledge preservation. The vastness of the Hofburg Palace in Vienna could be overwhelmed in a labyrinth of halls, apartments, and ceremonial rooms. Hidden within its monumental architecture, however, lay a treasure of a different kind. The Imperial Court Library, a sanctuary of knowledge, a repository of centuries of human thought and creativity. This institution, which would eventually become the Austrian National Library, was far more than just a collection of books. It was a testament to the Habsburgs' enduring commitment to the preservation and dissemination of knowledge, a belief that learning was as crucial to an empire's strength as military might or political alliances. The roots of the Imperial Court Library stretched back to the late Middle Ages, when the Dukes of Austria began accumulating manuscripts. However, it was during the Renaissance under Emperor Maximilian I that the collection truly began to take shape as a public institution. Maximilian, a man of letters and a keen patron of the arts and sciences, actively sought out and acquired rare manuscripts, illuminated texts, and early printed books. He understood the power of the written word, not just for historical record, but for shaping the minds of future generations. He appointed a court librarian, a scholar responsible for organizing and expanding the collection, signaling a formal commitment to the library's growth. Over the centuries, successive Habsburg rulers contributed to the library's expansion. Ferdinand I, a diligent and scholarly emperor, significantly increased the collection of theological and scientific works. Rudolf II, based in Prague, was a passionate collector, whose vast and eclectic library of occult, scientific, and artistic texts later enriched the Viennese collection. Each new acquisition, each rare manuscript purchased, each beautifully bound volume added to the growing intellectual wealth of the empire. It was a slow, deliberate accumulation, reflecting a consistent dedication over hundreds of years. However, the golden age of the Imperial Court Library truly blossomed in the Baroque era, particularly under Emperor Charles VI in the early 18th century. Charles VI, like many of his ancestors, was a learned man with a deep appreciation for culture and scholarship. He recognized that the library needed a grand fitting home, a place that would reflect the majesty of the empire and the value of its intellectual treasures. He commissioned the renowned Baroque architect, Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach, the same architect responsible for the Karlskirche and parts of Schönbrunn, to design a magnificent library hall within the Hofburg complex. The Prunksaal, or State Hall, completed in 1726, was a breathtaking achievement. It was a soaring space, nearly 80 meters long and 20 meters high, adorned with frescoes by Daniel Gran, depicting the apotheosis of Charles VI, celebrating his enlightened rule and wisdom. Venetian globes, intricate carvings, and statues of emperors and scholars lined the walls. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows upon rows of books, their leather bindings gleaming. It was more than a room for books. It was a temple of knowledge, designed to inspire awe and reverence for learning. The very architecture proclaimed the importance of the written word. Under the direction of court librarians like Gottfried von Swieten, son of the famous physician Gerard von Swieten, the library became a beacon of the Enlightenment. Gottfried von Swieten, a friend and patron of Mozart and Haydn, was a man of vast intellect. He implemented systematic cataloging methods, making the collection more accessible to scholars. He also oversaw the acquisition of countless new books, expanding the library's holdings in philosophy, science, history, and literature. He opened the library to a wider public, allowing scholars and interested citizens access to its vast resources, a progressive step for an imperial institution. The library's collection grew not only through purchase but also through imperial decree. Laws mandated that a copy of every book printed within the Habsburg territories be deposited in the imperial court library, ensuring a comprehensive record of the empire's intellectual output. This practice transformed it into a national archive of knowledge, a complete mirror of published thought. The collection included invaluable historical documents, ancient papyri, rare incunabula, books printed before 1501, and the personal libraries of various noble families and scholars, acquired over generation. The Habsburgs viewed the library as an essential component of their cultural legacy. It was a place where history was preserved, where new ideas could germinate, and where future generations could connect with the accumulated wisdom of the past. It demonstrated their commitment to intellectual pursuits, providing the foundational texts for scientific research, philosophical debate, and artistic inspiration. The Imperial Court Library, now the Austrian National Library, stood not just as a monument to Baroque artistry, but as a living testament to centuries of systematic knowledge preservation. A quiet but profound contribution to the intellectual heritage of Europe. It allowed scholars to delve into historical records, artists to find inspiration in ancient myths, and thinkers to challenge old ideas with new insights, all within its hallowed halls. Number 5. Public green spaces. The Prater, a vast expanse of green on the eastern edge of Vienna, was for centuries a private hunting ground reserved exclusively for the Habsburg emperors and their noble guests. Its sprawling meadows, ancient trees, and winding pathways offered a secluded retreat from the bustle of the imperial city. Yet in the late 18th century, a radical idea took root in the mind of Emperor Joseph II, Maria Theresia's son and successor. He envisioned a space for all people, a grand park where every citizen, regardless of social standing, could enjoy the beauty of nature, take a stroll, or simply relax. This was a revolutionary concept for its time, challenging deeply entrenched social hierarchies and demonstrating a new, enlightened approach to urban planning and public welfare. Joseph II was a ruler profoundly influenced by the Enlightenment, a philosophical movement that emphasized reason, individual rights, and the pursuit of happiness. He believed that the well-being of his subjects was paramount, and he actively sought ways to improve their lives. The exclusive nature of the imperial hunting grounds struck him as an anachronism, a symbol of an outdated system. On April 7, 1766, Joseph II issued a decree that forever changed the face of Vienna. The Prater was opened to the public. This simple act shattered centuries of tradition, transforming a private playground for the elite into a communal space for everyone. The initial reaction was a mixture of surprise and excitement. For the ordinary Viennese, the idea of walking freely in what was once forbidden imperial territory was exhilarating. They poured into the Prater, eager to experience its vastness. Horse-drawn carriages, once reserved for the nobility, now carried families on leisurely rides. People picnicked on the lawns, children played among the trees, and young lovers strolled along the pathway. It quickly became a favorite spot for recreation and social gatherings, a democratic space where people from all walks of life mingled, perhaps for the first time on such a scale. Joseph II's vision for the Prater extended beyond mere access. He encouraged the development of attractions to enhance the public's enjoyment. Coffee houses and restaurants sprang up, offering refreshments and places to socialize. Booths selling snacks and small amusements appeared. Gradually, a vibrant popular culture began to emerge within the park. Entertainers, musicians, and performers found a new audience, adding to the festive atmosphere. In the late 19th century, the famous Ferris wheel, the Riesenrad, would be built, becoming an iconic symbol of the Prater and a testament to its evolution as an amusement park, a destination for fun and entertainment. The emperor also ensured that the Prater maintained its natural beauty. While allowing for public access and commercial ventures, he insisted on the preservation of its green spaces, its trees, and its natural environment. It was not to become a mere fairground, but a large green lung for the city. He understood the psychological and physical benefits of open spaces, providing fresh air and opportunities for exercise in an increasingly urbanized world. This foresight predated modern concepts of public health and city planning, making Joseph II a pioneering figure in recognizing the importance of urban green areas. The opening of the Prater was part of a broader pattern of Joseph II's reforms. He also opened the Augarten, another former imperial garden, to the public, demonstrating a consistent commitment to democratizing access to spaces previously reserved for the monarchy. These actions were not just gestures of goodwill. They were reflections of his core belief in the principle of public utility, that the resources of the state, including its vast estates, should serve the welfare of its citizens. He believed that an enlightened monarch ruled for the benefit of all, not just a privileged few. The Prater became a model for public parks across Europe. Other cities observed Vienna's success and began to transform their own former royal hunting grounds or private estates into public spaces. It demonstrated that grand natural areas could be enjoyed by everyone, contributing to a healthier, happier, and more equitable society. The enduring popularity of the Prater, centuries after its opening, stood as a testament to Joseph II's radical vision. It remained a place where families gathered, where friends laughed, and where individuals found respite in nature, a direct legacy of a Habsburg emperor who dared to open the gates of his private world. It was a tangible example of how a monarch could directly improve the quality of life for his people through a simple yet profound act of generosity and foresight. Number 6. Classical music patronage. Vienna, for centuries, resonated with the sounds of music. It was a city where melodies flowed through cobblestone streets, where grand opera houses rose to majestic heights, and where the most celebrated composers of their age found a home, inspiration, and crucial support. This rich musical tapestry was not accidental. It was painstakingly woven over generations by the Habsburg emperors, who saw music not merely as entertainment, but as a vital expression and cultural sophistication. Their patronage attracted the greatest musical minds, transforming Vienna into the undisputed capital of classical music. The commitment to music stretched back centuries. Emperor Leopold I, who reigned in the late 17th century, was a composer himself with a genuine talent for writing operas and oratorios. He often conducted his own works, standing before his court musicians, a testament to his deep personal involvement. He was a prolific patron, maintaining a large and highly skilled court orchestra and commissioning countless works from leading European composers. Under Leopold I, the Viennese court developed a reputation for musical excellence, attracting musicians from Italy, the heartland of Baroque music. His dedication established a foundational culture where music was not just appreciated but actively created and performed at the highest level within the imperial household. The musical tradition continued to flourish under his successors. Joseph I, Leopold's son, was also a gifted musician and composer, further cementing the court's reputation. Charles VI, in the early 18th century, was a passionate opera lover, ensuring that lavish operatic productions were a regular feature of court life. The costs were immense, but the prestige and cultural richness they brought were deemed invaluable. The imperial court's demand for new music, for grand performances, and for skilled musicians, musical genius could thrive. The true zenith of Habsburg musical patronage, however, came in the late 18th century under Empress Maria Theresia and her sons, Joseph II and Leopold II. This was the era of what we now call Viennese classicism, the age of Haydn, Mozart, and a young Beethoven. These composers, whose names are now synonymous with genius, all found their way to Vienna, drawn by the opportunities and the vibrant musical scene, supported by the imperial court and the aristocracy it inspired. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, a child prodigy from Salzburg, first performed for Maria Theresia when he was just 6 years old. The Empress was charmed by his talent, inviting him to play at Schönbrunn Palace, While Mozart's relationship with the imperial court was at times complex, marked by both triumphs and frustrations, he was fundamentally drawn to Vienna, where he spent the most productive years of his life. He found audiences who understood and appreciated his complex symphonies, his innovative operas like The Marriage of Figaro and Don Giovanni, and his sublime chamber music. Emperor Joseph II, a music lover who played the cello and often attended concerts, was a significant figure in Mozart's life. Even if he did not always provide the direct financial security Mozart sought. Joseph II commissioned operas, attended premieres, and offered critical opinions with the musical world. Joseph Haydn, another titan of the era, spent much of his career as Kapellmeister for the Esterházy family, one of the wealthiest and most influential noble families in the Habsburg Empire. While not directly employed by the imperial court for most of his life, his work was known and admired in Vienna. He often visited the city, performing his symphonies and string quartets and engaging with the musical circles there. His work laid the groundwork for the classical style, and his prolific output, often performed for private aristocratic gatherings, co-create the profound impact of noble patronage. The Esterházys, like many other noble families, took their cue from the imperial family, establishing their own orchestras and commissioning works from the best composers. This trickle-down effect created a widespread culture of musical support throughout the empire. The Habsburgs also fostered institutions that supported music. The imperial court opera house staged lavish productions, employing the finest singers, dancers, and stage designers. The Burg Theater, an imperial theater, became a crucial venue for new plays and operas. Music education was promoted, and various court musicians served as teachers to the imperial children and young nobles. The very structure of Viennese society, with its numerous palaces and aristocratic salons, provided countless opportunities for musicians to perform, and for new works to be heard. The sounds of court life were steeped in music, from the grand balls in the Hofburg to intimate chamber music concerts in Schönbrunn, from military marches performed for public parades to solemn sacred music in the imperial chapels. Music was everywhere. It accompanied triumphs and sorrows, celebrated religious holidays, and simply provided daily joy. The Habsburgs did not just listen to music, they cultivated it, invested in it, and provided the infrastructure and the cultural climate that allowed some of the greatest musical geniuses in history to flourish. Their consistent and passionate patronage created a legacy that continued to define Vienna as a global musical capital. Long after the empire itself faded, the melodies echoing across generations. Number 7. Baroque architecture. Stepping into Schönbrunn Palace, particularly on a bright summer day, one is immediately enveloped by a sense of grand scale, intricate detail, and opulent beauty. Its vast yellow facades stretch across the horizon, commanding attention, while its sprawling gardens unfold in a meticulously ordered symphony of green. This magnificent imperial residence, which once hummed with the life of the Habsburg court, stands as a crowning achievement of Baroque architecture, a style that the Habsburgs championed and spread throughout their vast territories. It was not just a building, it was a statement of power, piety, and an unparalleled aesthetic vision meticulously brought to life under the guidance of Empress Maria Theresia. The story of Schönbrunn began earlier as a hunting lodge, but its transformation into the imperial summer residence we see today was largely the work of Maria Theresia in the mid-18th century. She inherited an empire in turmoil, but with remarkable resilience and an unwavering will, she not only secured her throne, but also embarked on an ambitious program of reform and cultural enhancement. For her, architecture was a visible manifestation of her rule, a way to project stability, wealth, and sophisticated taste. She recognized the potential of Schönbrunn to become a rival to Versailles, a symbol of Habsburg prestige. Maria Theresia entrusted the ambitious renovation project to Nicolas Picassi, a talented Italian architect who had already made a name for himself in Vienna. Pacassi took the existing structure and, under the Empress's keen oversight, expanded and adorned it with the characteristic elements of the Rococo style. A lighter, more playful evolution of the Baroque, he extended the wings, added countless rooms, and designed the intricate stucco work, frescoes, and gilded ornamentation that filled the interiors. Each room, from the grand ceremonial halls, like the Great Gallery, to the more intimate private apartments, was conceived as a work of art, designed to impress and delight. The construction of Schönbrunn was an immense undertaking, requiring thousands of laborers, skilled artisans and artists. Stonemasons carved intricate facades, sculptors adorned the walls with allegorical figures, and painters filled ceilings with breathtaking frescoes depicting mythological scenes and glorifications. The best craftsmen from across the empire were brought to Vienna, their skills honed in creating the very fabric of this grand vision. Maria Theresia was known for her personal involvement in the project, often reviewing plans, discussing details with Pacassi, and making decisions on everything, from the color schemes to the placement of furniture. She spent summers at Schönbrunn with her numerous children, bringing the palace to life with the sounds of a bustling imperial family. Beyond Schönbrunn, the Habsburgs' patronage of Baroque architecture was evident across their domains. They commissioned numerous churches, monasteries, palaces, and public buildings in this distinctive style. Architects like Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach, before Pacassi, had already begun to define the Viennese Baroque with masterpieces like the Galskirche, a monumental church dedicated to St. Charles Borromeo, and the Imperial Library's State Hall. These buildings were characterized by their dramatic flair, their imposing scale, their ornate decorations, and their use of curvilinear forms, creating a sense of movement and grandeur. The Baroque style was not just a fashion, it was a reflection of the Counter-Reformation and the absolute monarchy. Its theatricality and emotional intensity conveyed the power of the Church and the majesty of the Emperor. It sought to overwhelm the senses, to inspire awe and devotion. By commissioning such magnificent structures, the Habsburgs visually proclaimed their wealth, their religious piety, and their political authority. They used architecture as a powerful tool of propaganda, shaping the urban landscape to reflect their vision of an ordered and glorious empire. The influence of Habsburg Baroque extended far beyond Vienna. From Prague to Budapest, from Innsbruck to Milan, architects and artists inspired by the Viennese style created their own regional variations. Churches in Bohemia and Moravia, palaces in Hungary, and residences for the nobility throughout the empire adopted the sweeping forms, the elaborate ornamentation, and the grand scale that characterized the Habsburg Baroque. It created a visual unity across diverse lands, a common architectural language that spoke of imperial influence. The commitment of the Habsburgs to Baroque architecture was unwavering for well over a century. They funded its development, attracted its leading practitioners, and provided the immense resources necessary for its ambitious scale. Schönbrunn Palace, with its yellow walls, its glorious interiors, and its meticulously manicured gardens, stands as a prime example of this legacy. It is a place where history breathes through every gilded detail, a testament to a family's unwavering dedication to an architectural style that profoundly shaped the face of Central Europe, creating enduring monuments of beauty and power. The buildings they commissioned were not just shelters. They were living embodiments of an era's artistic and political aspirations. Number 8. Art patronage. Rudolf, the Second Holy Roman Emperor, reigned from 1576 to 1612. But his true kingdom was not merely defined by maps and political boundaries. It was a realm of the mind, a universe of rare objects, scientific instruments, and artistic masterpieces meticulously gathered and housed in his private collections at Prague Castle. Rudolf was an unusual ruler, often withdrawing from affairs of state. Yet his quiet obsession with art, alchemy, and the arcane transformed Prague into a vibrant intellectual and artistic hub, fostering anew. Rudolf's passion was his Kunstkammer, or cabinet of curiosities. This was no ordinary art gallery. It was a meticulously curated collection that blended art, science, and the exotic. He sought out objects that blurred the lines between human creation and natural wonder, believing that by collecting and categorizing the world's most unusual and beautiful things, he could unlock its secrets. His collection included paintings by the greatest masters of his time, like Giuseppe Arcimboldo, whose whimsical portraits were made of fruits and vegetables, and Bartholomeus Spranger, known for his elegant mannerist nudes. But alongside these canvases were intricate, cyampic instruments, celestial globes, rare minerals stuffed, exotic in animals alchemal apparatus. The acquisition of these treasures was an international undertaking. Rudolf employed agents across Europe and beyond, sending them with instructions and funds to scour markets, negotiate with other collectors, and seek out the truly unique. He spent enormous sums on his collection, often at the expense of imperial finances, driven by an insatiable intellectual hunger. When a rare automaton of a moving ship was discovered, Rudolf's agents were on the scene, eager to acquire it for his growing collection. Every new arrival to Prague Castle was a source of excitement and meticulous study for the emperor and his court of scholars. Rudolf's patronage extended far beyond collecting existing works. He actively supported and employed artists, sculptors, goldsmiths, and scientists directly in his court. He encouraged them to innovate, to experiment, and to push the boundaries of their respective crafts. Painters like Hans von Aachen and sculptors like Adrien de Vries found stable employment and creative freedom under Rudolf's patronage. He built special workshops within Prague Castle, providing his artists with the space materials and intellectual stimulus to create. Many of them produced works specifically for the Kunstkammer, knowing their creations would be admired by the emperor and his circle of intellectuals. Alchemy and astronomy were particular fascinations for Rudolf. He invited famous alchemists, like Edward Kelly and John Dee, to his court, hoping they could transmute base metals into gold or discover the elixir of life. While their promises often proved illusory, their presence stimulated scientific inquiry and experimentation, even if misguided at times. He also patronized brilliant astronomers like Tycho Brahe and Johannes Kepler, providing them with observatories and financial support, which led to groundbreaking discoveries about planetary motion. Rudolf was genuinely interested in the workings of the cosmos, believing that understanding the stars could reveal divine patterns in future events. The court at Prague under Rudolf II became a vibrant intellectual melting pot, a place where artists, scientists, philosophers, and mystics mingled and exchanged ideas. It was a unique environment where the pursuit of beauty intersected with the quest for knowledge, and where the line between art and science often blurred. Rudolf fostered an atmosphere of intellectual curiosity and artistic freedom, allowing his creative talents to pursue their individual visions without excessive interference. He even reportedly allowed his alchemists to work freely in their laboratories within the castle, the smell of their experiments sometimes wafting through the imperial corridors. While Rudolf's reclusive nature and his eventual political struggles often overshadowed his artistic legacy, his impact on European culture was undeniable. He amassed one of the most significant and diverse art collections of his time, a treasure trove of human ingenuity and natural wonder. He fostered an environment where groundbreaking scientific research could occur alongside unparalleled artistic creation. His personal obsessions, once seen as eccentricities, in fact laid the groundwork for later developments in both art and science, demonstrating the profound influence a single ruler's deep and unusual passions could have on the cultural landscape of an entire continent. His collections, though dispersed after his death, formed the core of many later European museums, their contents still inspiring awe and wonder. today. Number 9. Cultural exchange and diplomacy through marriage. The Habsburgs were masters of a strategy far more powerful than any army. Marriage. For centuries, their family motto, "Let others wage war, you, happy Austria, marry," was not merely a catchy phrase, but a guiding principle that built an empire spanning continents without firing a single shot in many instances. These strategic unions, however, were not just about land and titles. They were profound channels for cultural exchange, bringing new fashions, artistic styles, culinary traditions, and intellectual currents from one corner of Europe to another, subtly but powerfully reshaping the cultural landscape of the Habsburg domains. Consider the impact of the Spanish Habsburg line on the Austrian branch, particularly through figures like Empress Maria Anna of Spain. Born Infanta Maria Anna of Spain, daughter of King Philip III, she married Ferdinand III, Holy Roman Emperor, in 1631. When she arrived in Vienna, she did not just bring her dowry. She brought an entire cultural world from the highly formal and deeply Catholic Spanish court. The Spanish court was renowned for its rigid etiquette, its somber fashion, and its profound piety. Spanish fashion, characterized by dark, rich fabrics, ruffs, and an almost architectural stiffness, became influential throughout Europe. Maria Anna, arriving in Vienna, brought these styles with her. The Austrian court, previously influenced by Italian and German fashions, began to adopt elements of Spanish dress. The famous Spanish black became a symbol of refined elegance. This was more than just clothing. It was a visual language of power and solemnity that influenced the entire courtly aesthetic. The Empress herself insisted on maintaining many of her Spanish customs, from her daily routines to the specific religious ceremonies. She observed, slowly but surely, integrating these traditions. The Spanish court was a major patron of the arts, producing masters like Velázquez. While Velázquez himself never moved to Vienna, the artistic sensibilities and themes popular in Spain, such as religious devotion, portraiture with psychological depth, and a certain naturalism, found their way to Austria through the cultural currents set in motion by these marriages. Spanish artists might not have migrated en masse, but the taste and preferences of Spanish-born empresses and their retinues influenced commissions and acquisitions in Vienna. Gifts exchanged between royal families often included works of art further disseminating styles and techniques. Even more subtly, Spanish court etiquette and protocol began to permeate the Austrian court. The famous Spanish court riding school, a precursor to the Viennese Spanish riding school, influenced the development of classical horsemanship in Austria. The formal dances, the elaborate greetings, the precise ordering of processions and banquets, all these elements of courtly life were subtly influenced by the highly ritualized Spanish customs. These were unwritten rules learned through observation and imitation, creating a shared sense of decorum among Europe's ruling elite. The most famous example of this direct marriage diplomacy and cultural cross-pollination was perhaps the marriage of Maria Theresia's daughter, Marie Antoinette, to the Dauphin of France, the future Louis XVI. While this particular union sent Habsburg culture out of Vienna and into Versailles, it exemplified the principle. Marie Antoinette carried Viennese traditions, musical tastes, and certain fashion preferences to the French court, introducing new trends and influencing the cultural landscape there, albeit with sometimes disastrous political consequences. Conversely, French Enlightenment ideas and artistic trends also flowed back to Vienna. Through these marital ties, the continuous flow of princesses, their retinues, their personal possessions, and their lifelong habits across national borders meant that the Habsburg courts became fascinating melting pots of European culture. A princess from Spain brought her chefs and culinary traditions, influencing the development of Viennese cuisine. A princess from Italy might introduce new musical instruments or operatic forms. These influences were not always immediately apparent or fully adopted, but they created a rich substratum of cultural exchange, subtly shaping the tastes, the social customs, and the artistic preferences of the imperial court. Over centuries, the Habsburgs understood that these marriages were not just transactions. They were long-term investments in cultural soft power. They fostered an environment where new ideas and styles were introduced, debated, and often integrated, creating a cosmopolitan and uniquely diverse imperial culture. This quiet, continuous cultural exchange, facilitated by the strategic marriages of emperors and empresses, contributed to a rich tapestry of shared European heritage, demonstrating how personal unions could profoundly influence the broader cultural landscape. They brought the world into their palaces, one royal bride at a time, enriching their own traditions with foreign flavors and artistic expressions. Number 10. Education for nobility. Empress Maria Theresia was a ruler of extraordinary foresight and of fierce pragmatism. When she ascended to the throne in the mid-18th century, she inherited an empire that, while vast, was in dire need of modernization. She quickly realized that simply reforming the military or the bureaucracy was not enough. To truly secure the future of her lands, she needed an educated and loyal elite. The old system of tutors and sporadic schooling for young noblemen seemed insufficient. She envisioned something more structured, more comprehensive, and more aligned with the needs of a modern state. Her solution was the Theresian Military Academy, or the Theresianum, founded in 1751, a revolutionary institution dedicated to shaping the future leaders of her empire. The Theresianum was not merely a military school, despite its name. It was designed to educate young men from noble families for careers in both the military and civil service. Maria Theresia believed that future officers and administrators needed a broad education, not just in military tactics, but also in history, languages, mathematics, and even the arts. She understood that a well-rounded individual with both intellectual rigor and strong character would be a more effective servant of the state. This was a radical departure from the traditional aristocratic education, which often focused narrowly on martial skills or superficial social graces. The Empress personally oversaw the founding of the academy. She selected its location, a grand Baroque palace just outside Vienna, and appointed its first director, a man of integrity and educational vision. She set out a curriculum that was remarkably progressive for its time. Students were taught not only military science, strategy, and engineering, but also law, political science, economics, geography, and various modern languages like French and Italian. Latin remained important, but the emphasis shifted toward subjects that were practically useful for governing a complex empire. Physical education and fencing were also integral, ensuring the young men were physically capable. Discipline at the Theresianum was strict but fair. The students, often arriving as young teenagers, lived a communal life, fostering camaraderie and a sense of shared purpose. They wore uniforms, adhered to a rigid daily schedule, and were expected to embody principles of honor, duty, and loyalty to the crown. Maria Theresia visited the academy frequently, observing students, inquiring about their progress, and sometimes even engaging them in conversation. Her presence underscored the immense importance she placed on the institution and its mission. She saw these young men as the future pillars of her empire, and she took a personal interest in their development. The Theresianum quickly gained a reputation for excellence. It attracted ambitious young noblemen from across the Habsburg territories, eager to receive an education that would prepare them for leadership roles. Graduates went on to serve with distinction in the imperial army as governors of provinces, as diplomats, and as high-ranking officials in the Viennese bureaucracy. They were a new breed of educated civil servant, loyal to the Empress, and equipped with the skills necessary to implement her reforms and manage the affairs of a vast and diverse empire. The success of the Theresianum inspired similar educational reforms elsewhere in the monarchy. It demonstrated a new model for aristocratic education, moving away from purely private tutoring towards institutionalized, comprehensive training. It signaled a shift in the Habsburg approach to governance, emphasizing merit and competence. Alongside traditioning noble birth, Maria Theresia understood that in an increasingly complex world, inherited titles alone were insufficient. Leadership required knowledge, skill, and a deep understanding of the world. While primarily focused on noble youth, the spirit of the Theatianum reflected a broader Enlightenment era, emphasis on education and professional training. It was part of Maria Theresia's wider educational reforms, which also included establishing and modernizing universities and promoting primary education. She created a more meritocratic system, opening up opportunities for talented individuals, regardless of their social background, to advance in imperial service. The Theresianum remained a prestigious institution for centuries, adapting its curriculum over time, but always upholding its core mission of educating future leaders. It stood as a tangible symbol of the Habsburgs' commitment to enlightened governance and their belief in the Judean power of education. Maria Theresia did not just rule an empire. She systematically worked to build a more capable and loyal elite to serve it, through institutions like the Theresianum, which continued to shape generations of leaders for its vast territories. It was an investment in human capital, demonstrating that even a long-established monarchy understood the necessity of adapting and investing in the intellectual development of its people to ensure its long-term stability and prosperity.